Good morning, everybody. This is going to be Chapter 9 of An Esoteric Cosmology by Rudolf Steiner. The website is rsarchive.org. And let's jump into some more heavy material. See, originally when I picked this book to start off with, I didn't realize we were going to get so in-depth with some of the more difficult topics that are covered. It is just an overview, but these are topics that a lot of people aren't familiar with, or they have mixed up and kind of conflated with what has become New Age teachings. So a lot of the terminology may send your mind in one direction, whereas Steiner's talking about a fully explainable scientific way of looking at spirit and soul. And, the difference, I would say, the difference between those coming out of the legit stream of the esoteric orders is that they can give you an explanation for why something is the way that it is, whereas if you listen to these New Age guru types, they'll tell you something, but they can't explain in detail why it makes sense, why it is the way that it is. They can't do any of that, at least not from what I've seen. So that's where it gets dangerous. In the last chapter, it kind of talks about people going insane when they study this stuff from the wrong standpoint, or they get on the wrong path and they start studying this stuff from an angle which is not directly from the initiatory orders and the real philosophy from where this stuff actually came from. Like, you'll hear New Age people talking about astrology all day long, but they don't understand the philosophy that's inbuilt into astrology. They'll talk about things like auras or ethereal bodies, but they won't be able to break down and actually explain in a cogent way what this stuff actually means. It's just like little buzzwords to them. And then, of course, they're into like the mediumship and seance stuff and all that stuff, which true esotericism highly warns against that type of stuff, because you really don't have an understanding of what it is that you're even dabbling in. So, anyway, enough of that. Let's get going with this next chapter here. Chapter 9, The Astral World, Part 1. How are we to conceive of the astral world? The three different worlds of which occultism speaks are as follows: the physical world, the astral world, in parentheses, purgatory, and the third is the spiritual world, or Devakan in Sanskrit terminology, or in Christian terminology, we could call this heaven. So if you break these down, the physical world, then the astral world, which they've got in parentheses as purgatory, and then the spiritual world, or Devakan in Sanskrit terminology, the Christian heaven, they don't have anything in parentheses after the physical world. Now, if you really want to go deep dive the physical world, you will come across literature which describes the physical world, or the world of materiality, as hell. That might scare some people. And it puts a whole new spin on reading ancient scriptures and understanding that the physical world is really the lowest level of vibration. Just something to ponder there. Let's get going here. There are yet other worlds above and beyond these three, but they will not concern us in these lectures. They are, moreover, beyond all human conception. Even the highest initiates can have but a faint presentiment about them. We will concern ourselves here with planetary evolution within the confines of our solar system. The physical world encloses us in the narrow span of material existence between birth and death. Between two incarnations, we live and move in the astral and devaconic worlds. The kernel of man's being is immutable, reincarnating perpetually, but not eternally. The rhythm of incarnation and reincarnation had a beginning, and it will have an end. Man comes from otherwhere and passes otherwhere. The astral world is not a place, but a state, a condition of existence. It surrounds us, and we are immersed in it while we live on earth. We live in it as beings born blind who guide themselves by touch. If sight is opened up for them by operation, they see for the first time the forms and colors with which they have always been surrounded. Thus does the astral world open up to clairvoyant sight. It is another state of consciousness. In Goethe's scientific works, there is a wonderful passage on the essence of the light as the language of nature. It is useless to attempt to express the nature of a thing abstractedly. Effects we can perceive, and a complete history of those effects would, in fact, sufficiently define the nature of the thing itself. We should try in vain to describe a man's character, but let his acts be collected, and an idea of the character will be presented to us. The colors are acts of light. Its active and passive modifications, thus considered, we may expect from them some explanation respecting light itself. Colors and light, it is true, stand in the most intimate relation to each other, but we should think of both as belonging to nature as a whole, for it is nature, as a whole, which manifests itself by their means in a special manner to the sense of sight. The completeness of nature displays itself to another sense in a similar way. Let the eye be closed, let the sense of hearing be excited, and from the lightest breath to the wildest din, from the simplest sound to the highest harmony, from the most vehement and impassioned cry to the gentlest word of reason, still it is nature that speaks and manifests her presence, her power, her pervading life, and the vastness of her relations, so that a blind man, to whom the infinite visible is denied, can still comprehend an infinite vitality by means of another organ. And thus, as we descend the scale of being, nature speaks to the senses, to known, misunderstood, and unknown senses. So speaks she with herself and to us in 1,000 modes. To the attentive observer, who is nowhere dead nor silent, she has even a secret agent in inflexible matter, in a metal, the smallest portions of which tell us what is passing in the entire mass. And that is from the preface of Theory of Colors. Let us endeavor to form some conception of the astral world. We must accustom ourselves to quite a different mode of vision. To begin with, everything is confused and chaotic. The first thing to realize is that in the astral world, everything that exists is revealed as it were in a mirror, inversed. In the astral light, the cipher 365 must be read backwards, 563. If an event unfolds before us, it is perceived in inverse sequence. In the astral world, the cause comes after the effect, whereas on earth, the effect follows the cause. In the astral world, the aim appears as the cause, proving that the aim and the cause are identical, acting in an inverse sense according to the sphere of life in which we are functioning. The teleological problem, which no metaphysician has been able to solve by dint of abstract thought, is thus solved by clairvoyance. Another result of this inverse unraveling of things in the astral world is that it teaches man to know himself. Feelings and passions are expressed by plant and animal forms. When man begins to behold his passions in the astral world, he sees them as animal forms. These forms proceed from himself, but he sees them as if they were assailing him. This is because his own being is objectivized. Otherwise, he could not behold himself. Thus, it is only in the astral world that man learns true self-knowledge in contemplating the images of his passions in the animal forms which hurl themselves upon him. A feeling of hatred entertained against another being appears as an attacking demon. The astral self-knowledge occurs in an abnormal way in those who are troubled with psychical illness, which consists in constant visions of being pursued by animals and menacing entities. The sufferers are seeing the mirror images of their emotions and desires. No psychical trouble arises in true initiation, but the premature and sudden flashing up of the astral world may give rise to insanity. In clairvoyance, man is liberated from his physical body. Hence, the dangers that may threaten the mind and brain of one who attempts this kind of training without being absolutely balanced. The Rosicrucian Initiation involved a discipline which was directed to making man objective to himself, to producing, as it were, an objective self. We must begin by seeing ourselves objectively. This outer personification of the self makes it possible for the astral body to go forth from the physical body. What happens at the moment of death? After death, the etheric body, the astral body, and the ego of man have left the physical body. The corpse alone remains in the physical world. A short time after death, the etheric and astral bodies unite. The etheric body imprints in the astral body the memory of the life just past. Then the etheric body slowly dissolves and the astral body passes alone into the astral world. The astral body then contains all the desires generated by life, and being bereft of the physical body, has no means to satisfy them. This gives rise to a sensation of devouring thirst, the basis of the imagination of the punishment of Tantalus in Greek mythology. There is also the impression of being immersed in fire, Gehenna or purgatory. The idea of the fire of purgatory, which is laughed at by the materialist, is a true expression of the subjective state of man after death. By contrast, unsatisfied thirst for action produces the sensation of cold in the soul. It is this cold, born of action unrealized on earth, that is said to be sensed by the spirits in mediumistic seances. The soul living in the astral body must learn to break free from the forces of the physical organs and acquire a new organism for existence in the astral world. The soul now begins to live through the past life in backwards order, beginning at death and going back to birth. Not until the life has been lived through in the purifying fire to the point of birth is the soul ready to pass into the spiritual world, into Devakan. Such is the import of Christ's words to his disciples. Verily, verily, I say unto you, unless ye become as little children, ye cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. Man is impelled by desire when he is descending to earthly incarnation. Not for nothing is desire for the earth-born in man. The end and aim is that he shall learn. We learn through all our experiences, and they enrich our store of knowledge. But in order that man may learn on earth, he must be allured by or involved in enjoyment. When the soul is experiencing the past life in the astral world after death in backward order, there must be abnegation of enjoyment, while the essence of the experience itself is retained. The passage through the astral world is thus a purification, whereby the soul learns to forego all taste for physical pleasures. Such is the purification of the Hindu Kamaloka, of the consuming fire. Man must grow accustomed to existence without a physical body. Death gives rise at first to the impression of an immeasurable void. In cases of violent death and of suicide, The impressions of emptiness, thirst, and burning are much more terrible. An astral body that is not prepared for existence outside the physical body separates with great travail, whereas in natural death, the detachment of the matured astral body takes place easily and smoothly. In the case of violent death that is not caused by the will of man, the process of separation is less distressing than in the case of suicide. During life itself, a kind of spiritual death may occur, caused by a premature separation of the spirit from the body. The astral world is confused with the physical world. Nietzsche is an example of this. In his book, Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche has all unconsciously transferred the astral into the physical world. The result is a confusion and chaos of ideas, culminating in error, insanity, and death. The dim, dreamy life of many mediums is an analogous phenomenon. The medium invariably loses his orientation between these different worlds and is unable to distinguish the true from the false. This is what I was talking about when I began this chapter. I think I talked about it a little bit last chapter as well. It's like, if you're just going willy-nilly into this type of study without really pinning down definitions and tracing back where all of this comes from and doing a very thorough study, you're just opening yourself up to misinterpretations, misunderstandings, and a whole lot of nonsense. All these things really do mean something, and they are part of a gigantic body of philosophy that actually has genuine applications and real meanings behind it. So many people get swept away into the New Age nonsense because the terminology is similar, and it's like there's a real version and then there's a counterfeit version, and a lot of this New Age stuff is the counterfeit version of real, legit philosophies that have come to us through time based on real science. So that's really where this stuff comes from, but you wouldn't know it if you just jump into, say, the New Age section at a bookstore and start reading. You're going to see a lot of the same terms. You're going to think what you're reading in that book is referring to the same thing that people like Rudolf Steiner or H.P. Blavatsky are referring to, and then you're going to be very confused because it's just not the same thing. I mean, you even have a rift where in Theosophy itself, if you go from the teachings of H.P. Blavatsky, who really is credited with almost coining the term New Age in its popular parlance that it's used in. Now, she was teaching, to the best of her ability, the genuine stream of philosophy. H.P. Blavatsky, if you haven't read her books, go do it because they're excellent. But even within her own group, the Theosophical Society, as she got older and was ready to pass the torch on to someone else, the teachings after her were not as pure as her teachings, and it kind of got overtaken by almost like this socialist/communist group who then started kind of just debasing the teachings and just giving a whole new spin to what New Age actually meant. So now you get this idea, when you hear New Age, it's like all this jumble of ideas that all kind of falls within the category of occultism and witchcraft and all this nonsense. It's just been completely watered down, and the true meanings have been distorted. So you really gotta watch that. Not to say the phrase New Age is necessarily anything bad. It really is just referring to the ages of the cosmos, which are 2160 years, and that's when the sun rises in a specific sign, a specific zodiac sign at the vernal equinox. That's how you determine what age you're in. And after 2160 years, you're in a different age. You're in a new age. So we were going from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, and these were legitimate ways of measuring gigantic time periods back in the ancient times. But it's been it's been completely debased now. So anyway, let's get back to this here. Sounds like someone's calling me, so maybe I'll just wait for a second here. Okay, let's get going here. Okay, the dim, dreamy life of many mediums is an analogous phenomenon. The medium invariably loses his orientation between these different worlds and is unable to distinguish the true from the false. A lie in the physical world becomes an agent of destruction in the astral world. A lie is a murder in the astral world. This phenomenon is the origin of black magic. The earthly commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," may therefore be translated into "Thou shalt not lie," in reference to the astral world. The lie is nothing but a word, an illusion. It may do untold harm, but nothing is actually destroyed. In the astral world, every feeling, every idea is a visible form, a living force. The astral lie brings about an impact between the false and true forms, resulting in death. The white magician would impart to other souls the spiritual life he bears within him. The black magician has the urge to kill, to create a void around him in the astral world, because his void affords him a field in which his egoistic desires may disport themselves. He needs the power which he acquires by taking the vital force of everything that lives, that is to say, by killing it. And black magic, believe it or not, when you go back to the ancient times, white and black magic can be likened to what we today call deception and propaganda, although the white version is the pure version, and that is like telling the truth to advance good causes and living a good, just, upright life. And black magic is, well, what we see various elites doing these days, and the media, and they're in the business of deception. That is black magic. They are putting forth lies and deceptions to gain an end which serves them and does not serve the rest of humanity. Selfishness and egoic desires are what thrusts them forward in their unending ambition toward power. Black magic is still alive and well. That is why the first sentence on the tables of black magic is, "Life must be conquered." For the same reason, in certain schools of black magic, the followers are taught the horrible and diabolical practice of gashing live animals with a knife at the precise part of the body which will generate this or that force in the wielder of the knife. From the purely external aspect, there are certain points in common between black magic and vivisection. On account of its materialism, modern science has need of vivisection. The anti-vivisection movements are inspired by deeply moral motives, but it would not be possible to abolish vivisection in science until clairvoyance has been restored to medicine. It is only because clairvoyance has been lost that medicine has had to resort to vivisection. When man has regained conscious access to the astral world, clairvoyance will enable doctors to enter spiritually into the inner conditions of diseased organs, and vivisection will be abandoned as worthless. Knowledge of life in the astral world leads us to a conclusion of fundamental importance, namely that the physical world is the product of the astral world. The epidemics which raged notably in the Middle Ages are one example among thousands of the relation of human sins to astral events, as well as of the repercussion in the astral world of sins committed in earthly life. Leprosy was the result of the terror caused by the invasions of the Huns and hordes of Asiatic peoples. The Mongolians, the descendants of the Atlanteans, bore within them the germs of degeneracy. This contact with the European populace produced, in the first instance, the moral malady of fear in the astral world. The substance of the astral body decomposed, and this field of astral decomposition became a field for the development of bacteria, giving rise, on earth, to diseases such as leprosy. All that we throw out of ourselves into the astral world at one time will reappear in times to come, on the physical plane. What we sow in the astral world we reap on earth in future times. We are reaping today the fruits of the narrow, materialistic thoughts strewn by our ancestors in the astral world. This will make us realize how essential it is to nourish ourselves with occult truths. If science would accept the truths of occultism merely as hypothesis to begin with, the very world would change. Materialism has cast man into such depths that a mighty concentration of forces is necessary to raise him again. He is subject to illnesses of the nervous system, which are veritable epidemics of the life of the soul. What on earth we call feeling comes back again to earth in the form of actuality, event, fact. The nerve storms that exhaust man have their origin in the astral world. It is for this reason that the occult brotherhoods decided to demonstrate and reveal the hidden truths. For humanity is passing through a crisis and must be helped to regain health and equilibrium. Only by virtue of spirituality can this health and equilibrium be restored. And that is the end of, chapter 9 here. Let's take a look. Yes, that was the end of chapter 9, the Astral World Part 1. And I just ask you, if you're new to this, just kind of bear with me. These topics are unfamiliar to a lot of people, and there's a lot better breakdowns that I wish I would have covered first before jumping into this, but it's all good. Take this information. Nobody's saying believe it. Obviously, it's a lot of this stuff is foreign and hard to believe. I even struggle with certain aspects of it, but I try to always just keep an open mind, because so many times when studying esotericism and occultism, if something doesn't make sense, just kind of file it back in your mind. Don't really think one way or another about it. Just kind of be neutral on it. And then later on, as you're reading something related, it will put the pieces together in your mind, and then it'll bring an understanding to it. So just approach it with an open mind. Nobody's saying, hey, just believe this on a whim just because someone said so. That is like diametrically opposed to what occultism is trying to teach. It's just saying, hey, we know this is different. This is a different way of thinking about things. Don't accept it on face value. Just file it away and keep it in your mind and just kind of think about it every now and then. And as you learn more things, these pieces will fall into place. And that's the thing about occultism and esotericism. The truths reveal themselves to you. You're never just jumping into something and believing something because someone said so. It all can be proven to you, and then you can gain experience of it for yourself. That's the interesting part, to me anyway, about occultism and esotericism, is that it actually gives an explanation of why it is this way and why it works. It's a totally logical, completely cogent and coherent way of making sense out of the world. And I don't expect you to believe that just based on this book here alone. Obviously, like I said, there's much more explanation that has to be done. But file it in the back of your mind and just keep following along, and I guarantee it will be worth it. So, all right, that's it. Take care. Like, share, do all that good stuff if you want to, and we'll be back with Chapter 10 soon. Take care. Thanks for listening.